there yet. I believe Senator Briggs Hopson is ready to rock and roll here, Chairman of Appropriation, District 23. There we go. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I need to get your playlist. You always have good music. Maybe I need to give Lance credit for that, but y'all got some good music.
Both of them. We've always done this, that I'm in charge of the opening bumpers and he's in charge of the closing bumpers, so we know who to blame if they're not good, one way or the other. So we have fun putting those things together. All right. Yep. First of all, let me start out with this. We are deep enough into the month of April now. This is the 5th. Do we have any numbers on March, the March numbers?
Yes, March numbers were good. Hey, Paul, one other thing real quickly.
Sure.
I noticed on the screen that I've got Issaquah, Warren, and Yazoo counties. Now I have Madison County in my district. So in the future, we'll have to add Madison. I don't want my friends and constituents in Madison County to be
all of Madison or part of Madison?
No, I've got the part around Flora. So that part in the I guess western western part of Madison County is in my district.
Well, you're not too far. You're just a little bit outside of Lake Caroline and Annandale and in that area, or do you just have Flora?
It's Flora and back a little bit to the south, and then over towards the Hinds County line. If you know where you get across 49 and go back there towards some of those roads, Mount Leopard, even to the south, and some of that area. So got part of Madison County too. So
you get to campaign at the near the or in the petrified forest too, don't you?
That's right. That's in my district. How about
People forget about that, but if you haven't been there, you need to take the kids at least once to the petrified forest. It's amazing. It's the only one, I do believe, east of the Mississippi River. In the eastern part of the United States, as far as petrified forest. Got to go all the way to California to find another. So let's talk about those March numbers. Okay. What do they look like?
Well, March numbers were good. We'd been kind of struggling along the last few months and not getting great numbers, and we had a big bang here in March and picked up we're up to about 175 million over our estimates. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think about 85 million over, 80 to 85 million over for this last month, which is a big change from the previous months. Still looking at, one of the things that you have to keep in mind, looking at, we got a $20 million flush of cash from AG settlements. And then we still, interest income is something that we still have. We're about 105 million on interest income. So that's, not always great. You don't want to prop up your budget with interest income, but nevertheless, we're ahead of schedule, and hopefully, we'll be closing out these next few months strong. But it gives us something to look at as we start putting the budget together here in the next few weeks.
So does that, again, you're absolutely right with one-time dollars like the $20 million on the settlement you were talking about. But does that placate or make people feel a little bit better as far as the House and Senate and you guys who are in charge of the numbers, that we can take care of the step-by-step reduction as far as personal income tax?
So I feel like we're still on track for that. We're down in our income for the individual income tax. In fact, down pretty significantly. I mean, we knew there was a good chance we might be down. We're down below where we thought we would be. In fact, I want to say it's it's over $100 million that we're down in interest income, even from what was projected, which was another 185 million or so that our first lick at the tax cuts. The good news is our sales tax and use tax are up. Those are the two, the three things that I've looked at that are up. Interest income, which is not the best thing to be looking at when you put your budget together and how you're trending, but you definitely look at sales and use tax. Those are up. Most other categories, actually our insurance premium tax is up too, and that's not necessarily a great thing because that means that more people are paying for higher insurance, but it's certainly part of what comprises the whole budget, and there's some good and bad in there. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. When people talk about the trickle-down economy, that's kind of a little bit like this, because I don't know how economists do it, or does it make itself whole when you give money back to the individual families on a personal income tax cut, they go out and they buy something, and it returns as far as sales taxes are concerned. I'm not sure what percentage of that is made up, but it looks like that formula is working here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, who knows what the exact percentage is, Paul? I know when we talked about the tax cut, some of the economists talked about something in the 30% range. So if you cut taxes, let's just say, if you were cutting $100 a year for somebody's taxes, probably something in the $30 range is going to come back into the budget by way of, spending and sales tax increases, use tax increases. And so some of that gets flushed back into the budget.
I got you.
That's good.
I do want to ask you this: as far as I think Fred Lamar had a bill that did make it out of committee that talks about further reductions, and I think it was just to open up the narrative about and do some groundwork next year. Did you get a chance to look at that? The bill from the.
I did not look at the entire bill. Somebody brought it to my attention that it didn't come through appropriations, so it was not in my committee. But somebody brought it to my attention. There was a bill out there, and they, I think, showed me a couple of bullets on it. But that's all I saw, and it was, I think, a step down of 0.3% or something like that a year. That's maybe the only thing they showed me was there was a step down in income taxes, and I think there was maybe some increases for other taxes and maybe some local taxes, but that's about all I saw out of it.
And there was, I think, cutting the grocery tax in half was the proposition on that one, but I'm sure we'll hear more about it during the late summer and beginning of next year when the next session happens. Let's talk about what's alive, what's dead. Medicaid expansion is still alive. What, from your perspective as chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, your thoughts on the Medicaid expansion?
Well, the bill that we passed was what really, is a Medicaid waiver program. It's for the working people. And I think, Paul, I'm sure you've had people on to talk about it. It covered the folks that fell in that 0 to 100%, and you had to be employed, you had to be working to qualify for it. It was paid for. Any increases were paid for by the MCO tax, the managed care organization tax, and that was the big part of what that program was. It's getting those folks covered. One of the big things, and I had this discussion with somebody last night. One of the things I liked about our plan was it did not cut or eliminate any of the health insurance exchanges. That's a big thing that people need to realize. We've got hundreds of thousands of people that are on health care exchanges, and those, they pay in, depending on their level of income. They run from 100 to 400% of federal poverty level, and so folks that are on those are paying a little bit based on their income. That's a good thing. And the second thing is their rates, provider rates, are better. So you get get them paying more to the doctors and the hospitals and the caregivers. So we did not want to interfere with that at all. We want to keep that program alive because we think it's good and it's a good service and people can pay in. I like the idea that people can pay in based on their income. And so ours does not affect that at all.
How do you answer some of the complaints, and this is from a lot of folks have talked, we've had them on the air talking about this, that the Senate plan actually costs the state more than the people the House plan, certainly when you compare the people left on the House plan is a better fiscally responsible bill than the Senate plan, even over the AOC, the Affordable Care Act.
Well, here's the distinction, and I certainly look forward to having these discussions with the House leadership, and we've all been kind of entrenched right now in our own bills and looking at things that we did, certainly some House bills that came over and looking at those. I'm delighted to have discussions with their leadership team and those that are working on the Medicaid plan for them. But what I see is, their plan would go all the way up to 38% of federal poverty level, which is probably more of a traditional Medicaid expansion type plan. They do get a higher FMAP rate, and so that's certainly a benefit. But you pull all those people off of the federal health insurance exchanges, and so eventually you're going to have to bear the burden of a huge number of people, and then you're going to end up with lower provider rates. So I think ultimately the plan that we had in the Senate is going to be a better plan. You need to cut away.
Yeah, we do. Do you think?
Okay.
that we're going to get there in this session as far as
On
conference?
Medicaid?
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't had the in-depth discussions right now. I'm so focused on some budget things. I have not had those discussions with the speaker and his leadership team on Medicaid. I mean, I know he's got a few people that will work on that, but we'll have time to talk here over the next couple of weeks.
Let's talk about education. That bill is live when we come back with Briggs Hopson next. And there was a song that existed on 45 RPMs. Joe South. Walk a mile in my shoes. Seems like yesterday, but then again, it wasn't yesterday. Andy on C-Spire text line. Universal school choice, referendum process, elimination of income tax, create some real change. Stop getting in the way of real growth because you're too timid to tackle issues that will create bold changes in our state and our true tenets of conservatism. And, oh, by the way, eliminate MAEP. I got to tell you, we've had some bold changes in the last few years under Republican leadership, and I think there's more to come. Dennis DeBar, who is Senate Chairman of Education, says the House refuses to discuss tweaking the MAEP, and at the same time, Dennis DeBar and the Senate refuses to consider the House education formula. They did strike all of Inspire. But it is alive. What's the status of that, and what do you think is going to happen? Briggs Hopson.
What's going to happen? Yeah, thank you, Paul. I don't know what's going to happen exactly. I can tell you this about the Senate plan, and I'm going to go back to when I was a young beginning legislator. Something that struck me about MAP was when we had the recession back in the 8, 9, 10, 11 era, and the MAP growth was continuing, the pull or the request for additional funds, despite the fact that our revenue was going down significantly those years. So I knew that there was a problem. I'd looked at the formula, and I didn't find that the formula was all that flawed, but there were two things in there that jumped out at me. One was that it was not tied to some inflationary index, and two was there's such a broad gap between what the requirement, local millage requirement is, between what your max is and what your minimum is. And so, and I applaud Dennis DeBar. He's a great education chairman and a great friend here, hardworking. He does everything the right way, and he's really looked into this. And those two are really two major facets of this MAP rewrite. And that's one, to look at the millage rate. I'd actually like to see it go higher than what he's got in there, but I think at some level you have a hard time getting people to buy in. And that's to take the minimum millage and bump it up some. So that means that the locals have to contribute more into the MAEP formula. If you want your schools to be good in your community, you're going to have to step up to the plate a little bit and get that millage increase. And the second thing is he tied it to a 20-year average on inflation. And I think that was just so refreshing to me, because I remember those times when you were getting the pull and it had nothing to do with what your inflation rate is. And so I think having a formula that's tied into your overall growth, kind of like what we, looked at, and you start talking about what your budget's going to be when you look at how you're going to run a tax plan, you need to tie it into what your inflation rate is, and that gives you some indicator about how much expenses are going to be and how your budget's going to be in the future. And I think that was really, those are two key tenets in his Senate plan.
But how do you, and again, Briggs Hopson is chairman of the Senate Appropriation, is my guest. How do you address, because there's a lot of differences between a Chula school system and a Madison school system. It's just when you talk about tie it to, and you ask the local people to pay more as far as ad valorem of the tax base, it's unrealistic because they're anemic at best now. Where Inspire apparently is addressing some of these failing schools through the tax base is to make sure that they get a little bit more, and the cities that don't need that much help probably get a little bit less. I understand that's kind of rather caustic. The House Chair of Education Committee, Rob Robertson, of the Inspire, would target additional help in the areas of the state that need it. It's almost like MAEP uses a double-barrel shotgun where Inspire kind of uses a laser. And the problem with the MAE double-barrel shotgun is they've only had 2 shells to fire since MAEP was MAEP. So what you're basically saying, let's tweak a program because you see some good in it, but don't throw the whole thing away. Am I right?
Yeah, and I think if you look at the MAP formula, it factors in the districts that have less resources, that have more needs. And so it's already factored that in. And I think, again, the problem that I saw was the 2 major flaws, and that is something that's not tied to the inflation. And then the other is we got to understand that, look, if you've got room to grow in your millage rate, your local contributions, don't complain to the state because maybe you don't have all the money you want, because you've got some districts that are up in the 50s in millage, and you got some that are down around 30. Yeah. And I've had a few superintendents and school board members call me over the years and go, hey, what are y'all going to do about funding education? And I said, well, what are y'all paying locally? My community pays this, and you're only paying this. Y'all could make up a little down there. That's something that you got to look at.
And I wish we had more time here, but all the while, every time we talk about this, every year, from year to year, I think there was one year we had level funding, but every year we put millions and millions more into education, with or without this. Am I right or wrong?
Yeah. Oh gosh, we put more into education than anything else in the state government, for sure.
Yes.
One of the things I'm going to say quickly, Paul, because I know we're going to run out of time
10
soon,
seconds.
but Lance Evans got confirmed yesterday, and I said to him during his hearing, look at our virtual schools. That's a great way to get kids. We've got to do better with that. We've got to do better with virtual schools and make sure our kids can get the education they need.